In this forecast, all modes of severe weather, including tornadoes, will be possible across the Midwest and Ohio Valley today. And we have the latest tropics update. What is happening in the Atlantic Ocean? All of that and more is coming right up. Hey everybody, welcome back to another max velocity weather forecast, and today what we're going over is that severe weather potential for today across portions of the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. I'm going to give you the latest breakdown on timing, the intensity of the storms, and everything that you need to know will be in this forecast. Let's hop right into it. As of right now, there is a slight risk for severe weather. It does currently go from Michigan all the way back down to Missouri. This is a big update from yesterday. Current threats today: damaging winds is our main concern. Upwards of 80 miles per hour may occur with a storm or two. Isolated large hail, potentially as high as golf ball size, and as well as a potential for maybe a brief or weak tornado or two. That would primarily be up in central and southern Michigan. Otherwise, the tornado threat should remain fairly low outside of that. There is also a marginal risk of severe weather that extends into eastern Kansas, the upper Michigan panhandle, and as well as northern Arkansas today. Again, the main concern in those areas will likely just be damaging winds up to 70 miles per hour. All right, let's take a look at the timing this afternoon. Starting off with Michigan, we'll start to see storms develop right around 2 to 3 o'clock. We actually have a few severe storms already out there this morning. Those are primarily damaging wind related, and that will obviously continue throughout the late morning and into the early afternoon. By 4 to 5 o'clock, though, we will have more organized showers and storms developing all the way back up through areas like the lakes, all the way back down in areas like Indiana, and that line will extend all the way back down most likely through Missouri as well. So this will be a pretty elongated line of storms that we see develop this afternoon. By about 6 to 7 o'clock, storms moving off to the east. We'll start to see Detroit, eventually going closer to midnight or so. Most of the storm activity will transition down to the south. We won't see much other than maybe a few passing showers in Michigan going to the overnight hours. Other than that, no severe weather is expected. Let's take a look at the timing back down in areas like Illinois and as well as Indiana for this afternoon. By about 1 to 2 o'clock, we will begin to see that line of storms develop anywhere from Springfield all the way back up through Chicago and again back into areas like Michigan. By about 3 to 4 o'clock, we'll have again a pretty defined and pronounced line of storms that will primarily be comprised of that damaging wind threat. Might be some isolated large hail mixed in there, maybe also a brief or weak tornado. That main threat, though, is primarily going to be in Michigan for any sort of brief tornado threat today. Going closer to the evening hours, we'll start to see storms moving down to the south and east. We may see a secondary line of storms develop later, and that could also potentially pose that threat for some severe weather. Damaging winds again being my main concern. That would be mainly towards Springfield and Champaign by about 7 to 8 o'clock. Other than that, those storms will move down to the south and east, eventually going closer to midnight, 1 in the morning. A lot of storm activity may be still ongoing in western Illinois. That may pose maybe an isolated flash flooding threat as well. Going into the overnight hours into tomorrow morning, overall storm activity expected to clear out for those locations then. By the way, let's take a look at the low-level jet for today. What is the tornado threat looking like? As I mentioned before, really going into this afternoon, the low-level jet is the strongest, where you can see these purples and reds, and that's primarily over Michigan. Otherwise, there's a little bit of a low-level jet back up in northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin. Can't rule out something brief in terms of a spin-up, but the setup is not really there for any sort of tornado threat primarily out in the Midwest. It's primarily going to be for those in Michigan, and it's very low overall. I'm mostly concerned about damaging winds. Tornado threat, nothing to be panicked about. Just have a plan in place just in case there is any tornado warnings today. But other than that, low-level jet will be weakening tonight. It is not going to be that strong, so tornado threat even later this evening, not expected to be much anyways. By the way, there is a marginal threat for severe weather on Friday for South Dakota, as well as portions of North Dakota into western Minnesota. Damaging winds my main concern. Other than that, there's actually currently no severe risk for tomorrow. That could change by the time this forecast gets out, but obviously, that's pretty shocking. We have not had a single day in at least several months that we've had no day of severe weather, so it would be pretty much the first in many months now. By the way, the rain over the next several days, who's going to see rain, who won't? Well, over the next several days, the European model is picking up on a pretty decent rain system that may go through Tennessee, picking up as much as 3 to 6 inches of rain in some spots, potentially next week. Obviously, we have a lot of time in between now and then. We can see the majority of the rainfall over the next 6 to 10 days, primarily in the Midwest, Ohio Valley, Dixie Valley, anywhere on the East Coast, anywhere really east of the United States. It's pretty much where we're looking for the terms of the rain. Otherwise, there's going to be some rain back out here in areas like the Rocky Mountains and as well as going through the southern and central plains, but it's not going to be anything significant. But anyways, we definitely need the rain down there in Texas, really without a doubt. Those areas really desperately need rain. Hopefully we see some sort of beneficial rain here pretty soon. Take a look at the temperatures, by the way. Tomorrow we will again be returning to the 100s across areas like Texas, 90s and 100s all across the Great Plains. Other than that, a bit of a cool down there for the Midwest. Wisconsin only in the 70s for the most part, maybe some low 80s. Back in New England, temperatures near 100. It would be a hot day, or really hot days coming ahead for those up in New England. Going into next Tuesday, though, temperatures are forecasted to take a big dip, especially across areas in the Northeast and anywhere in the northern plains. Temperatures back in New England, back into the 70s and 80s for highs by next Tuesday, as well as back down in Texas. Still dealing with the hundreds, unfortunately. A quick little update on the tropics as of right now. Saharan dust, again, is pretty dominant. We do have a fairly favorable environment right now in the Gulf of Mexico. However, there is going to be Saharan dust entering the region pretty soon, so tropical developments not expected still over the next 7 to 14 days. Otherwise, you can just see this huge plume of Saharan dust that is all going to be continuing to really impact the overall tropical developments over the next several days. Again, we will keep you updated with the latest, with the most honest forecasting here on YouTube. Make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Like the video if you haven't already. This forecast is brought to you by Platinum Contracting and All Dense Repair.